It's good to see you folks out. It's good to have our fine guest speakers from the Austin Film Festival, Erica and Doug. And rather than try to tell you about them, I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you, tell us a little bit about their history, what experience they have, what they're doing now, and how much they love their jobs and how it thrills them. I'd like to hear about your passion and creativity. Erica, why don't you start off with us, my dear?
Sure. Thanks for having us. Hi, I'm Erica Deiparine-Sugars. I'm the director of programs for the Austin Film Society. And I have been with the society for about 5 years now, almost 5 years. And my role is really to look at programs for our creative makers across what we do in the organization. So most of you probably know the Austin Film Society has been around for a while. It was started in 1985 by filmmaker Richard Linklater and other filmmakers to kind of just get films seen and to share the joy and his love of film with everyone. And since then, fast forward to now, we really have grown our programs and our impacts wider than when it first started in exhibition. So the way that we see our work at the Austin Film Society is really supporting a larger ecosystem of the filmmaking community here, which is made up of artists, right? Filmmakers, the industry at large and jobs within that industry, and also just by providing film culture, supporting film culture. So that's kind of the ecosystem that we feel like we can support. And through that, we do this through the different programs that we run. So some of you may know that we are operating under 3 locations now. So we have locations, the AFS Cinema is where we do a lot of our exhibition programs, host other film festivals, have special programs there. It's at Highland. And our main location is Austin Studios on 51st, which is a working film studio. And then our Austin Public location, which we were able to start managing in 2015. And Doug's going to talk a little bit about that. And that's really our community media program and our access for whoever in Austin wants to learn more about film and how to make film. So we do love our jobs. And a lot of what we do is just get to meet people and get them involved in what we are doing. Just a little bit, one person who's not here to represent is like Austin Studios. I think that's sort of our main property, the oldest property. It's the 20-acre film studio off of 51st Street. It is where Richard Linklater's Detour Films is. We have a number of other industry that we support there, like MPS Camera and Lighting, Rooster Teeth, which is a large global media company, their main headquarters is there also on Austin Studios. And then there's a 175,000 square foot production space where films and TV can get made. And currently the CW Walker is shooting there, and that's their home for the next year or so. So over the past 20 years of Austin Studios, 626 productions on location have been on location there. About 8,000 jobs have been generated through those productions, and about $2.1 billion of economic impact. So really, when we talk about the ecosystem and its growth, the studios is sort of a major part of what we are doing. But I think sort of newer are to sort of feed that is stuff that we're doing at the community media program. So I can toss it over to Doug, and I can also talk about a little bit more about the filmmaker support services that we do also after, if Doug, you want to talk about Austin Public a little bit.
Sure, thanks, Erica. How's it going? My name is Doug Gray. I'm the station manager at Austin Public. And so I oversee the community access, which I'll talk a little bit more about. That's called the producer program, which is where anybody in the community can access the resources at Austin Public and create content. And that content is also distributed out to the 3 public access channels that we manage for the city. And I also oversee the operations of the facility. And so the city, the facility that we're in, Austin Public, as Erica mentioned, is one of the 3 locations managed by the Austin Film Society. And it's a contract that we have with the city of Austin to manage the space, which is actually a city facility. And this is a facility that was built in 1990 for the purposes of public access TV. So we are a TV station sort of at our core. We are the head end for the 3 public access channels, which is sort of in a world of 7 total public education government channels that are still funded from various entities, whether it's City Hall for a government channel, ACC and AISD each have an education channel, Travis County has a government channel. And so we manage the 3 public channels. So that's sort of what has put us here. And with that, comes equipment. So the ability to have the community come in and distribute content. We also were able to buy equipment to create that content. And with that comes basic training. And then over the years, what started back in 2015, we've sort of built that up to add other intermediate and advanced level training. And then that has sort of grown into a workforce development program called AFS Creative Careers, which I'm happy to answer any questions about. That's sort of brand new. And so those are kind of the 2 different pathways that you can take on site, is either get more formal training within the Creative Careers Department, which is actually a paid program with eventual job placement. And then also you can come in and gain access to resources here for cameras, lighting, audio, editing, we have audio suite, all sorts of production equipment that we train that you can access yourself, or you can network with people who are creating content. There's ways to come and crew on shows for free for those who are in our studios. It's a variety of different backgrounds and interests. We have churches and filmmakers and nonprofit organizations, podcasters, YouTube creators. There's a lot of different types of people that are here. And so that concept is called the producer program, and that started all the way back, going back to the early 70s in Austin, as cable companies were coming into the larger television markets. The FCC actually stepped in and required that those cable companies they were required to provide channel space for the local communities, because as equipment became more accessible in the 70s, right? There's no internet, there's no YouTube, there's none of that. The average person cannot get content out to their community. And so as it became a requirement, these cable channels that were given to the cities for public education government use were given to, at least in Austin, the public side was given to a nonprofit. And so it was a group of University of Texas students that started it in 1973, and they were called Austin Community Television. And they actually ran it, went through a few different name changes all the way until 2005, when there was a changeover with a different nonprofit. And then they ran it for 10 years. It was called Channel Austin, if anybody was around in the mid 2000s, and then up to 2015. And then the Austin Film Society, we went after the contract and have been running it ever since. So I'm happy to answer any other questions once we get into the questions about producer program, about public access, how to get involved. And then both Eric and I can talk about creative careers.
Yeah, and the one thing I think outside of locations is our services to filmmakers. So for many years, a lot of what we do is really to support the filmmaking community, from emerging new filmmakers to more advanced, more seasoned filmmakers, in making sure that they can sustain a career, create films, sustain a career in Austin and in Texas. So our support to filmmakers is Texas-wide. And we probably are best known for our AFS grant, which is actually money to support films by filmmakers in Texas. It started in 1996, and since then we've given out over $2.2 million in cash and over $400,000 in in-kind services to almost 425 filmmakers. Again, statewide. So this is, benefits Austin, but it benefits filmmakers across the state. And we just closed our deadline for feature films. So there are 2 deadlines. Feature film deadline was just on Monday. And then we do a short cycle in the fall. So for short films. And again, it's for any level of maker. Our goal is to really find makers who are in a position to make career leaps, really. You're making your first film, you're going to make your first short film, maybe you're going to make your second short film that would really put you on the map, or maybe you just need a little bit of money to really get the film up and running so that other investors and other funders can come aboard. And we're looking for a lot of new voices, new interesting stories, particularly from the Texas area. So that's probably one of the services that we've been known for specifically in terms of how we help filmmakers. But we do help filmmakers in terms of connection to the industry, network with each other. A lot of the in-person programs that we do is really great to build community, build the filmmaking community so they can work together, meet each other, support each other as they do. And then also we have a fiscal sponsorship program. So if there's ever a need for your project to go under a nonprofit fiscal sponsorship to get access funds, we do that for our filmmaking community, as well as advice and referrals. You know, that's a lot of what I do is I talk to filmmakers and they might have advice about film festivals or maybe other filmmakers they could talk to that really help them on their path, right? Or a lot of industry-wide contacts. I bring them to Austin when they come to visit. We connect filmmakers to the Sundances of the world or the IFPs and make sure that our filmmakers are being represented across the US and taking advantage of those other opportunities outside of Texas. So that's a lot of what the Filmmakers Support Program does for filmmakers. And similarly, we think about the community media program at Austin Public and our filmmaker support being sort of like a spectrum. We work with a spectrum of makers, and there's a lot of crossover. People who kind of come through Austin Public to learn and maybe make their first film end up being people who get supported through the AFS grant and use our other services. And we have filmmakers who've been around for a while who want to learn new skills to keep up or network with other folks, and they take advantage of our Austin Public and our community media program. So there's a lot of crossover there. And we see how people can like grow their skills and have different entry points into the sort of things that we do at Austin Film Society. So I think that's all I had.
Erica, go ahead, Donise.
Thank you. Erica, I had a question. Where does this money come from? Is this money that you earn through what you do, or is this from the Film Commission? Is it from the state or grants or what? Because that's a lot of money you're talking about.
Yeah, so this year we will give over $150,000 to filmmakers. So it is from donations. So we're a nonprofit organization. A lot of our money and our money for the grant comes through personal donation and foundations that we apply to. You know, we have a fund right now in the Features Grant that's called the North Texas Pioneer Fund. And it's actually just for North Texas residents who are filmmakers. And it was actually a large part of that was put together by filmmaker David Lowry, who had gotten his first film grant from the AFS grant and really felt like it helped him launch his career and felt like he wanted to give back. And so he, along with the Oak Cliff Film Festival and Leyline Entertainment, got together to create a pot of money for us to distribute through our AFS grant. So it sort of comes in that way, people helping other people, you know, grow in their careers through the grant. And we also have a travel grant, which is actually part of the AFS grant, which is something really unique. And as I've worked in the industry and worked specifically with film organizations, it's quite unique in that it's a grant to help, it's almost like a stipend to help people who have gotten into film festivals, either international film festivals or someplace else outside of Texas, to actually go to that film festival and network and find distributors and find funders and meet other people. Because as you know, even though we're sort of in the center, we're not in the filmmaking hub, right? And so it costs a lot of money for our filmmakers to go to every festival they get into, and or travel with their producer, travel by themselves. So our travel grant is for any Texas maker who's gotten a film in one of the film festivals that we have on our list on the website. And it's as simple as that. You just apply. If we still have the money in the pot, you can get a distribution, you get some money distributed to you so you can go to that festival and participate. The film does not have to be AFS funded. The film doesn't have to be connected to us in any way. But if you get that film into one of those festivals, you're eligible for this travel grant.
Erica, we were talking earlier. I was asking you how busy you were. Can you kind of tell us what you went through with COVID, how you're recovering, and what the business is going through right now, what it looks like, what your biggest challenges are, and your biggest rewards, benefits, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think like most nonprofits, we got hit hard with COVID, and a lot of what we do is in person. So we have the cinema. We had to close the cinema. We had to close all of our programs at Austin Public. And then, our filmmaker support. So it was hard in terms of, we buckled down. We did do a little bit of work online. So we were good to pivot, did some exhibition programs online as our theater was shut. Doug and the team, we did some of our training classes online so that people could still learn and also still submit content on the channels, because the channels run 24/7. So the content, we still need the content, and the content still gets broadcast, but we wanted to make sure people had some access to the equipment as well. So we started a small program for people to come check out equipment. But with social distancing and people only being able to have certain slots so they can come pick up the equipment for. So, I think we weathered the storm really well. I think during the period of time, we were already set up to do a strategic plan, and we had gotten a grant to do an AFS's next 5-year strategic plan. And we were also doing a diversity and equity inclusion audit right before the pandemic. So it really gave us time to focus on these like major institutional things, with the hope that we would be coming back and everything would be good, right? So it was actually great timing so that we could really concentrate on these kind of major institutional projects while we were deciding when was the good time to come back. We did have a major campaign to reopen the cinema that was just amazing. People really were excited and really wanted the cinema to reopen. And so that campaign went really well. We were probably one of the last cinemas to open to the public, because we wanted to make sure once we opened it, because we were a nonprofit cinema, we couldn't go backwards. We couldn't close it again. It would just be devastating for the business. So we needed to make sure we were ready to open when we were ready to open, taking all the right precautions and figuring out the staffing issues. But people were very excited to bring the cinema back. The cinema's at 100% now, and it's got some great programming. We're hosting the Cine Las Americas Film Festival, which starts tonight there. We host the Austin Asian American Film Festival, I think later this month. And then Doug can speak to Austin Public. I mean, it's been great and full.
Yeah, we're back to 100% capacity at Austin Public now. And I would say one of the big takeaways from having to pivot during COVID was remote streaming. We prior to COVID, if you wanted to go live on the channels, you were on site in one of our studios. And when we shut down, we were shut down on site for about a year. And as Erica mentioned, we were checking in and out gear, but we weren't using the studios. And so we started, looking at different software that we can buy. We went after some production kits for remote like podcasting or like small, like at-home productions. And we now have a workflow for people to stream remote to us. So we had a lot of musicians going live during COVID. We had some of the shows that were, any kind of talk shows or small variety shows could do it from home, and they would send us the feed and go out live in the channels as well as our own social media. So I think for me, other than learning how to teach, equipment classes online, which was a, pretty big undertaking, really the lasting one is streaming. It's really broadened our ability to get content from people.
Yeah, I had a question. I don't imagine that you will release equipment to just anybody or allow just anybody to come in and start filming or even give them a grant without some sort of resume or expertise. What kind of things do you look for before you decide to invest in a person like that? And where would you look for them to maybe get their skills from around here?
So I can jump in and I can let Erica talk about the grant side of things, but as far as the access to resources, it is for anybody at any level. We provide access to the Austin metro area. So if you want access to resources, it is a requirement that you live in either Williamson, Bastrop, Caldwell, Hayes, Travis County. But that's what we exist for the city. Have a contract with the city is for anybody to come in and gain access to the resources that we have here to create your own content and to help get distribution on that content. And then with that comes classes that you can attend. We do have scholarships for classes, and then we also have some different subscription levels for gaining access to those. So that's what we call the producer program. And then with the funding, I think Erica can talk a little bit more about the grant and filmmaker support side.
Yeah, the actual funding to filmmakers is through our grant process. So that's an application process that happens twice annually. And what they are requiring is that you just have the right materials to apply. So you're going to have like a treatment and a budget and some, not resume, but you need to have bios of the people who are part of your crew, right? Your creatives, and a little bit of a timeline about your project. But really, it's for any level of filmmaker to apply. The grant itself is reviewed or juried by both the filmmaking community that we choose that are part of Texas filmmaking community, and also we have a jury who make the final decisions about the grant and the grant amounts. They're a jury of independent film community from outside of Texas. So we actually don't make the final decisions. We really want it to be peer juried. And what they're looking for is sort of basic creativity, some kind of vision for the project. They feel like the project will be completed. They're not really looking at you as having like a long resume or having made 100 films before or anything like that. A lot of filmmakers that do apply and do get grants are emerging. This might be their first short film, but they just need to know that you have one creative vision and feel like that the money is in good hands, that you're going to use that money to get this project off the ground. And so there are a number of things they might be looking for, like realistic budget, realistic plan. Maybe you're not you're a first-time filmmaker, but you have a lot of experienced people who are guiding you along the way, maybe some consultants or co-directors, even a DP that has been working before, editors. So if you are new, I would always say, surround yourself with good people who know how to make a film, right? And so that can help you a lot, both in the process, but also to get people on board, funders, other people on board on your film. Good, Gary, thank you.
Erica and Doug, maybe both y'all on this. Are there content restrictions, or does that happen as a result of the fact that people have to approve it? If they don't like it, it ain't going to go anywhere. I'm just curious on either creation or distribution level.
So they are two separate things with what Erica's talking with about the grant and the grant approval side. And then with what I work with on the public access side with the channels, to join the program, there's a media policy class, and we cover things like copyright law, defamation laws, privacy laws, what you can say and show, but we're content neutral. So we're operating the channels for the community, but the Austin Film Society is not screening the content that's going out onto the public access channels, but there are certain policies that a member of the producer program will learn in a 2.5 hour class that they take in to start the process of joining the program. And so that, it's really, there's a lot of, leeway in what you're creating, what you're doing, but there are certain things that are FCC policies and state laws and things the city requires of us as well. So that's the public access side. And then there's
that's specific to the public access distribution. So if you did want to create a piece of content and you edit out certain things because of the FCC guidelines and policy, you're free to, one, you own that content. So it's not owned by Austin Film Society or the city of Austin. It's yours. So you get to do what you want with it, outside of giving it to Austin or Austin Public to put it on the channels. But that content is yours, and you can, so we don't have a restriction on what it is or where you post it. Obviously, for the film side of things, we are hoping that these films go to the festival or get on a big screen or go theatrical. So we are looking for films that have that likelihood. And that could be really niche films too. We have a lot of filmmakers who get funds for, who do experimental films or very specific genre films like horror. And they have, we do ask in the application, kind of, where do you see this film? Where do you think the distribution is, right? And people may say, I only want to go to small horror film festivals or small sci-fi film festivals. That's my distribution. And that we're looking at that film based on what your goal for the film is, right? So we're not going to say this film is never going to hit the big screen and have a theatrical release, so we're not going to give it money. If that is not your goal, if your goal is that this is the kind of release you want, you're going in this direction for very niche film festivals, and we think that's going to be very successful in what your plan is, that's what helps you get that money, right? We want the film fund is really to help you as a creator achieve the things that you're setting out for yourself. We don't have, it doesn't have to be at AFS Cinema. We don't feel like, it'd be great if it was, and it's like a full circle moment if you get a grant and then you can show at the cinema. But if it's not appropriate for that venue, it's not appropriate for that venue. It's just kind of got to be where you hope your career is going as a maker.
I wanted to say, if anybody wants to ask a question of either of our guests, go down to the reaction thing and raise your hand so we can see you and we can connect you. So I'm just seeing some of the folks now. If you got some questions, do raise your hand. Meanwhile, I just really appreciate your expertise, your thoroughness, your clarity, your knowledge of the facilities and your job and so forth. Having said that, Daniel, you are on, brother. Unmute yourself.
I don't have a question, but I want to describe some of the experience I've had with Austin Public and Doug. I'm an actor, but I'm also a hobbyist photographer and videographer. And I've taken the classes there on equipment, on some of the production stuff, and it is absolutely incredible. And the price is very affordable. For some of it, you need to be in the producer program, but it is just, you're not going to find a better deal. And then once you've taken the classes, you then have access to the equipment, and the equipment is free to use. And this isn't just video equipment; it's sound equipment. It's also post-production equipment, including a computer and the software that goes on the computer. So you can. So if you're not ready to produce something fully, what Austin Public is looking for is content. So if you're willing to share it and just make a short scene and just get some experience with the equipment and with recording something, just to get something off the ground, there's just not a better way to do it. And it's such an incredible opportunity that we have here in Austin to do that. And the equipment is really top notch. It's really good.
Yeah, and I can kind of elaborate on that too. Thank you, Daniel. It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a little while. We probably have, probably 2 or 3 new cameras since you've been around. But so the way that the funding, because there was a question about funding with Erica on the grant side too. So the way it kind of works on the producer program end is that it's actually the connection with the cable companies is that part of the funding that we get through our contract with the city actually comes from the 3 cable companies in town, because the idea sort of back in the 70s sort of started with the distribution, and with that there needed to be equipment for the general public to create the content for distribution. So now we're obviously a training, people come to us for training, access to the equipment, networking. There's a lot of different interests in Austin Public, and it's not just about the content distribution. So just to kind of make a connection with why through the producer program, if you're taking a class and then you get access to resources through either a scholarship, if you qualify financially, it would be free. And then we also have it's either $12 a month or $120 for the year to gain access to the resources that you train on. But there's no cost for like per reservation. It's just you're paying that subscription or you're on scholarship. But just to kind of clarify the connection with why there's a requirement for something to air onto the channels. But as Erica said, you own the content. You're the creator. We're content neutral. We're merely here to just train the classes, access to the resources, and distribute it for you. But you do own the content as a producer if you join the program, and then you're free to distribute that to wherever else you're going or wherever you made it for, or whatever your plans were.
See, that takes me back to my question. I didn't imagine that you would turn anybody loose with a $500,000 camera who didn't have any idea of how it worked. But it's good to know that you have classes there. Now, I do also know that ACC has a pretty good filmmaking program over there. If somebody just comes from ACC after taking several classes or something, would that qualify them to use the equipment?
We do allow testing out of resources. If you come into the producer program and you know how to use a specific camera or audio gear, lighting gear, or any kind of grip type of gear, then we do allow testing out. There's a process for that, but you would still need to join the program in some way, either on scholarship or through a subscription to access the resources. And then there would still be that requirement that once you have a final video product that you're ready to distribute on your own, that something needs to go onto the channels. But yes, we have producers, who are members with us that come from ACC. We have UT film students, but then we have people like myself. I found Austin Public in 2007. I was at UT. I didn't get into film school, and this has been my film school. And so that's sort of also why we've created the Creative Careers Workforce Development Program, because it can be an alternative to or something in connection to your training at another educational institution. So
Doug, I wanted to ask you a question, not to ask about tech support, but I'm going to ask you a tech support question. Do you know if Google Fiber offers those channels? When I was on Spectrum, yes. I can't find on Google for Fiber.
So Google Fiber they did have our channels and they had them in HD, but in November of this year, or of 2021, they discontinued their TV services. So I'm not sure if they're still providing that service for anybody who had it, but all of the public education government channels were taken off of Google Fiber back in November because they were no longer focusing on their TV services and purely focusing on fiber, internet connection. So right now we're on it's Spectrum, Grande Communications, AT&T Uverse. Those are the three cable companies in town that have all of the public education and government channels, and we're channels 10, 11, and 16. And then the others are sort of sprinkled in there and the other lower numbers. But then we also have Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire apps. It's just called Austin Public. You can go to the App Store for that device or on Amazon, and you can download that app, and then you can watch the streams in full HD, and you can also watch some video on demand. So every file that's given to us through the producer program, the producer who owns the content is giving us permission to air it on the channels, which will then stream at the same time on our Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire apps, and then we are allowed to use it for limited storage on a video on demand, so people can find it and watch it shortly, thereafter for about 2 to 3 months at a time.
Donese, go ahead.
Well, this is way off the subject, but Daniel, I'm dying to know where you are. Is that Hawaii or Florida, or what tropical place are you in? Because that sure ain't Austin.
It's virtual, Austin. It's just a fake background.
Oh, shoot. Here I was thinking you were in Tahiti or some exotic place. Okay,
No, I
that's
wanted to add
Oh.
something that Doug said about the streaming. You can also just stream from the webpage.
Yes.
So if you have Google Fiber, just go to the webpage and stream from there directly.
Yeah, the austinfilm.org.
Thank you. Doug, do you ever get pressure or hassle because people don't like the content? Is there any kind of opposition you ever feel?
I mean, there's the occasional complaint that comes through, but not really. I mean, I think everyone's pretty happy to have an outlet to get their own content out. It doesn't seem to be, and there's plenty of time. We're 24/7 on all 3 channels. But again, we're content neutral, so we're here to support all viewpoints of public dialogue. It's not up to us. So we teach our media policy class. People go through the class, they create their own content, and then we distribute it. And unless someone really has broken a policy of ours or a state law or something, that's really the only time we would get involved or be notified. But we rarely get complaints.
Anybody got a question? I've always got plenty. Just raise your hand, folks.
I was going to mention that if you are interested in kind of the things from a maker's, a creative standpoint, we have what's called our Make newsletter. It comes out every 2 months, and it really has all sort of the programs upcoming for any kind of maker. So things that we do on filmmaker support, upcoming classes at Austin Public, but also any other opportunities for grants, fellowships, other film festival opportunities from partners statewide and also nationally. And that also is part of our newsletter. So if you ever sign up for an AFS newsletter, there are a number to sign up for. But if you say that you're a maker or you're interested in film funding or classes, you will end up getting on that newsletter, which is different from the Watch newsletter, which really talks about what's playing at the cinema. But I think it's always helpful. I always kind of point people to that newsletter because it's just helpful to know if you're a creative in any sort. We do also have, we used to pre-pandemic, but hopefully soon again, have what we call movement maker dialogues and what we'll feature call creative careers. And it's really getting the community. You don't have to be a filmmaker. You can be another creative in the community together around certain topics. So we might have guest speakers like this, but particularly industry focused. So maybe screenwriters. Before this, we had cinematographers who were visiting in town talk about their relationship to directors. We had Tala come and do tax workshop for filmmakers and creatives, just so that, when it's tax time, that's something they connect to. So we do those kinds of things, and it brings a great community here to Austin Public because we usually hold them here in the studio, and people get to meet each other from all across the industry. So
Are those still happening, Erica?
we
Now?
are hoping to launch those again in the fall. So we're getting our staff, in this pandemic, we also had to reduce our staff, obviously, since we didn't have a lot of programming, which was unfortunate, but we are ramping up our staff again. And now that we're at 100% capacity at all of our locations, we're bringing back a lot of our programs.
Questions, anybody? We're very
I have
grateful
one.
for y'all's input. Go ahead, Denise.
Okay, Erica, can you tell me how to subscribe to that newsletter?
Yeah, so that is on our website, and I believe it is at the bottom of our website to subscribe.
Thank you.
That's where I saw it before.
Yeah, it's there. Subscribe to our newsletter is a link at the bottom.
Yeah, and then once you do that, it'll ask you what you're interested in, and so you just check the box of what things you might be interested in.
And for those of y'all on the chat, Daniel has posted a link. And were you going to post something, Erica, as well? Or is that the link that you're going to post?
No, I think Doug might post some Austin Public.
Yeah, I can post, someone had direct message me, but I can post the link to all the classes that are coming up, some of those classes, or questions about classes.
How long are the classes and about how much do they cost, Doug? Can you tell us that?
It depends on what equipment. So for the what we call a certification class is through the producer program, which means that after the class, you're going to have access to those resources if you're in the program. And they usually, for things like cameras, audio, lighting, rig and stabilizer type gear, those range about 3.5 hours. If we get into editing, post-production classes, we teach a lot of the Adobe Creative Suite, Final Cut X, we teach Pro Tools for audio, DaVinci Resolve for color correction. So those classes usually are about 6 hours, usually split between two days or 2 nights of 3 hours each night. And then we get longer into more advanced camera classes that teach also post-production workflow, like the Red Komodo we teach, and that class involves software that's proprietary to Red and that post-production workflow. And we also have some other workflow classes that can get up to about 10 hours. So it just depends on the class, but our goal is not to be, we don't have, series, or we're not, accredited like that. It's more for, it started with access to resources, and it sort of is expanded from there with more, here's a class where you learn how to use a camera and the functions of the camera. And then you can take our intermediate cinematography class, which talks more about the art form of what you're doing with that camera, or field lighting techniques on, the artistic nature of lighting. And then you can get into other things like post-production, intro editing, but then the, editing techniques and things like that. So it's just sort of started with the certification classes, and it's sort of built up from there. And then within the Creative Careers Workforce Development Program, we're really filling in the gaps for things that are needed for actual workforce, job placement versus creating, maybe your own content for distribution. So, and then the costs, if you're on scholarship, if you qualify financially, which there's information on the Austin Public section of the website about that, but it would be free. And then usually the gear classes range from anywhere from $30 to $55 total, and you just have to take it once.
Tootie, did you have something?
Yes, my question is regarding the grants. I know you had said the short film is due in the fall. What's the end date, the deadline for that? And what is the eligibility for it? Eligibility.
Yeah, so the short grant deadline has not been posted yet, has not been finalized, and we'll be doing that soon, because we just had the deadline for the features grant, which was this past Monday. And so it will be in September. It's usually in mid-September is usually when it is, but the date will be, again, will be posted on our website, and we'll have a press release about all of that stuff too, so you'll hear about it. But if you are on the newsletter, you will find out when that date is. But we open the application cycle about a month before the deadline, so people have time to kind of check out what the application looks like and have time to apply. The shorts grant is for films under 40 minutes. The eligibility is that you are a Texas resident, have been a Texas resident for at least a year, and you have to have proof of residency, current Texas residency, and you have to make sure that all the application materials are submitted, and that is the eligibility. So like I said, it's going to be asking you for a project description, a budget for your film, a timeline, a script if you have it, or a treatment for the short film. Most people, if it's a narrative film, will do a script, and the budget summary, and then I think it's a bios, and a work in progress sample, which actually is important. And that work in progress sample may not be for the current work, because maybe you haven't shot anything yet for this film. You're proposing to go into production for this film, so it might be a sample of other work that you have done. If you're a new director, never shot anything, never directed anything before, it could be a sample from one of your creative partners. So it could be your producer or your DP, somebody who's sort of above the line creative. For some people, they've done theater and they've never done a film, but they have a video of their theater performance, right, that they've directed. People have submitted that as well. And it doesn't have to be a film. Maybe you've done commercials. Maybe you've been a commercial director or music video director prior, that could be your work sample. So those are the things that are the eligibility requirements, or the requirements of the grant.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I was going to also ask you, Erica, when you get projects, um, if they don't get made or approved, what's the main reason? Or is there a main reason?
The main reason I would say is that we just don't have enough money to give to all the people who apply.
Ah,
Because there are always a lot of really great projects, really, truly, truly. There are some really well-deserving projects, and we get probably close to a little over 200 applications each year. We can only fund maybe 10% of that, and that's not bad. Those odds are actually really good if you look at other grants, but that's still only 10%. So the 90% that we have to say no to, it's not because they're bad projects at all. It's just that we don't have enough money to go around. And also what people really want to see from one year to another. So like I said, there's a panel of reviewers who look at it, panelists who make their recommendations. I mean, I think there are some things that probably are true, which is sort of, I would say, the tips I always get. I do a workshop for potential applicants every round, just so they can walk through the application. So for the shorts application, we'll do the same. We'll probably have posted 2 or 3 webinars that I just kind of walk through the application process and talk through questions with people. But some of the sort of major things that happen is that people don't budget well. And what I always tell people to do is, even if you've never done a budget before, you really need to have like realistic numbers. And so you have to do a little bit of research, look at other projects. We have samples of budgets on our website too from projects, and it's really helpful because, again, what you're trying to convey to somebody, to a reviewer, is that this is a viable project. I know what I'm doing. It is a viable project. And then just understanding why the money actually is going to help you as a filmmaker in your career, because essentially for short films, you probably can ask for no more than $10,000 for production, which seems like a lot, but in your full budget, that may be a little bit of money. And for features, this past features round, you can ask for up to $15,000, but some of these feature films are several $100,000 to make. So part of the decision-making process is also, how is this money going to help you? Is it because it's a certain period of time you really, really need the money to get to production, or you need to pay a very particular type of expense that will really make this film happen? So those are the kinds of questions the evaluators are looking at. But
is there much of an issue or a division on what gets done? Is there political fighting or artistic fighting that much, or is it a fairly smooth process?
oh, it's a pretty good process. I mean, we are open. We are genre agnostic. We fund all kinds of films, documentaries, narratives, horror, artistic, and sometimes we like to say we'd like to fund things that we don't think will get funded elsewhere, because there are certain types of films that are just not as popular, and big funders will fund very certain like hits, right? Like things that they can see going into theaters. But again, if your goal is not to get into big multiplexes all across the country, and is really to maybe get into really niche art or experimental film festivals and be sort of in the art world, that's great. And those are the films we love to see, because those are sort of unique, show a lot of uniqueness, show off very specific talent. We can see people who are going to have a career maybe in that particular type of film. Those are the kinds of things that I know our jurors like to fund.
And Tootie, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. You all had mentioned a sponsorship program. Could you all talk about that? And then the networking, do y'all do in-person networking? How does that work?
So fiscal sponsorship is a program under filmmaker support, and we look at films that need sort of the 501c3 designation for getting mostly like state grants or foundational grants. And if it's mostly for those kinds of films that are not what we call nonprofit in nature, that they're not there to sell off to a commercial entity necessarily, but they're going to be raising their money just to cover their expenses and get the film out there. So documentaries kind of fall in that vein, art films, public interest types of films. might fall into that vein. And so you would be basically asking for donations, taxable donations. So that is an application process, and you have to be an AFS member, but you can apply if everything checks out and we have all your materials and we feel like you will be successful at fundraising, then we could offer that service. And that information is on our website as well. So there are also films that are examples of some of those films that are in our fiscal sponsorship. They are on our website and they can raise money through our website, and we promote them and we try to support the filmmaker through the life of that project when they're under fiscal sponsorship. And then what your other question was?
Networking.
Networking, yes. Networking. We did a lot of our networking in person, unfortunately, and we've been doing some networking online, Doug, right? Particularly with the producer program. And then there's a new tool that the producer program has started using.
Yeah, so since COVID, we don't have a lot of large events. We used to have do things like open houses and have things like movement dialogues on site, or just larger events. Overall, what we haven't really talked a whole lot about was the overall AFS membership, which gives discounts on tickets at the cinema, discounts on classes at Austin Public, depending on the level that people are paying for. There's other perks and things as well. And those have member mixers, and those are starting to come back, and they're at AFS Cinema. So I think that's a really great way to plug in there. But usually, the best networking, I think, just happens on a day-to-day basis in the classes. People are on site, they're handing out business cards, they're getting to meet people. I'm sure, Daniel experienced this, where, if you're coming in, you're taking new classes, you're just kind of starting out, you might be in classes with some of the same people, and you kind of get to know them and hear about what they're working on. But then also we have a Facebook forum group called Austin Public Producers Forum, and people network and post things there. And then we have something called Crew Connect, which is actually on a portal that producers will get access to when you join. Producers, when they join the program, they'll get a portal that has all of their information about classes they've taken, certifications they have. It's where you make reservations for equipment. It's where you can upload and submit content for distribution. And there's a way to now search for other producers and crew members' skill sets and skill levels. So when someone joins the program, we actually ask questions around skills, and it's perfectly fine if someone's a novice at every level. But it also helps us show skills growth over time, which is information that's useful for us and also for the city. But if you can come in and kind of self-rate yourself for camera and audio, lighting, live productions. We also have an option for acting. You can put a bio, you can add a reel link, you can add a website link, and then you can sort of opt into being contacted by other producers. And so there's a way to search through the portal for certain things. So if I'm looking for actors, then I could just check a box for someone who's interested in acting. I can find a whole list of who that is that's interested in being contacted by me. And I can find their bio and a reel and contact them with the information that I'm given through that portal.
Well, I would like to thank both of you for being so professional, so passionate, so knowledgeable, so creative, and so helpful to the society, to Austin Society, to the Film Society, and just to the world, for being creative people and trying to get people's creative energies and juices running and out there. Thank you so much, Doug. Thank you so much, Erica. We deeply appreciate your time. I'm going to post these links, and for those of y'all on here, be sure and copy the chat. You can get the links. Donise, why don't you close out for us, my dear?
Thank you.
Well, all I wanted to say was thank you so very much for your time and your expertise. Bruce, did you have a question?
No, I really just wanted to thank these guys for
Good.
coming on, and it's really good information, and everybody could pursue it to their own ends,
Well, I think what's important is they are here to help us, and we need to show them a great deal of appreciation and
Right.
all kinds of accolades. I truly appreciate your time, your expertise, and the education you've given us all tonight. So thank you very much from Network Austin Mixer.